Good morning, dear students. In the last class, we have talked about Plato and particularly some Greek ideology that has been emerged at that time. And also we have talked about Plato and his contribution as a philosopher and as a critic. And now in this particular lecture, we are going to deal with the important ideas of Plato that we have just their names we have discussed in the last class at the end, and now we will move on to discuss that ideas in detail that has been communicated by Plato. So, the first idea of Plato, that is knowledge, and what knowledge is and how it should be acquired and what we have to do with that, what reality is, and which branch it provides us knowledge. So, such a different ideas that has been communicated by Plato in this particular topic, and that we will discuss in detail. So, Plato believed that ideas or heavenly archetypes alone are true or real. Means what knowledge is. When Plato is talking about that, at that time he says what ideas are there. Ideas means the basic concepts, and these basic concepts which has emerged. For example, if we talk about any particular object, so when we utter the name of that object, an idea get created in our mind of that particular object, and this idea, okay, that is eternal idea, the concept which get originated with that. So, this would be only the real element, or also we can call it as heavenly archetypes. Heavenly archetypes means the that has been created, as all this universe and everything it has been created by God. So, what this idea, this thing, this object that is that has been created by God means its concept, that is only the real element, and all other things after that which we watch, we see, we observe everywhere. So, they are just copies, or they are unreal, means they are not the real one. So, for Plato the only true and real thing is that the idea that has been created by God of a particular thing. Then he says poets and painters are altogether ignorant of conceptual knowledge. Okay. So, first of all he communicated us what is knowledge, what is reality, and the reality is that the central idea, the original idea of any thing, person, whatever it would be. So, its original idea is the true, real and important one, and the poets and painters, whatever they represent, okay, all these poets and painters, they are ignorant of conceptual knowledge. Conceptual knowledge means that heavenly archetype, the idea, and these painters and poets, they are ignorant about that, because they don't represent, or they don't provide you the base or basic idea, the heavenly archetype or the concepts, the ideas that has been created by God, and as it is ideas that may not be communicated by the poets and painters. A work of art has no hold of reality in the way that knowledge has. Now, here Plato discriminate between knowledge and art, and he says art is not real and knowledge is real. And what he said, see, art has no hold of reality, art don't have reality, and the knowledge, it has a reality, and that is discrimination. So, Plato prefers knowledge to the art, and he criticizes the artist for that also, because what it do, art represents things as they appear and not as they are or ought to be. This knowledge provides us the actual thing, the idea or the heavenly archetype, but the art, painter, poets, all these people, what they do, they represent things as they appear, means whatever things are there in this universe and how it appears, how these things appears, that would be communicated, that would be represented by the poets and painters, and that is why these people, these painters and poets, they don't communicate, they don't represent what the thing actually is. So that's why he criticizes both painters and poets. And as per that, Plato begins with an ancient feud, that is conflict between philosophy and poetry. And there is always the conflict between philosophy and poetry at the ancient time. And basically we are referring poetry, and Plato has referred poetry. Actually poetry, it represents the literature itself, because at that time in the Greco-Roman period, all literature this was being composed in poetic form. Whatever dramas were there, epics, okay, particularly Homer's epics, Aeschylus, Sophocles, they are the dramatists of ancient Greek. So these writers, particularly, they have composed all of their work in poetic form. Though drama were there, they were also produced in the poetic form, and that's why he talks about poetry, or he referred or used the word poetry instead of literature, and he compares it with philosophy. And this conflict between philosophy and poetry is evident in his in the Plato's work. And Plato resolves that poetry must be banished from the ideal state. Okay. Poetry means literature, and what Plato wanted? Plato wanted to banish poetry from the ideal state. And why he has he reacted like that? Because there are so many different reasons behind that, and Plato had charged literature or poetry in his another ideas that we will discuss in detail, and for that he wanted that poetry should be banished from the commonwealth. The essence of Plato's criticism and analysis is straightforward, since every particular object in the sensible world is only an image, its appropriate form. So what was Plato's ideas and the base for it? The essence of Plato's criticism and analysis means the base for his criticism and analysis is that whatever is there on this universe, all these object, every object in the sensible world, means what we can sense it, or we can observe, we can watch it. So all these different objects which are there, all that are image of that idea, not the original idea. Okay, the idea means in the first line we have talked that what is true for Plato, the reality is only the idea or heavenly archetype. So that is only the truth, and whatever is represented, okay, whatever is there in this universe, all these objects, they are merely images of that idea. Means suppose we have the flower of rose in front of us, and when we look at that flower, at that time that flower we think it is a real one, okay, and when we make the same flower with other elements, so that becomes its copy, it becomes an art, but the flower is original for us. But for Plato, that flower, that rose, it is not original. What is original for Plato? The idea of that rose, means a rose, okay, God has created that, and what idea was there in the mind of God at that time while creating that. So that mental concept of rose, that would be the original form only, and what we see in the garden, in our surrounding, whatever. So this is only the image of that original idea, and that's why he says all these elements, all these objects in this world, they are only images or its appropriate forms. Okay, all these elements that we are observing, they are the form of original idea, not the original one. Then every representation of such a particular must be at least twice removed from reality. And now what he is saying, whatever objects are there, okay, we were talking about the rose. So when we have that rose in our hand, and that is real for us, but for Plato it was not real. And what he says, all these objects, they are at least twice removed from reality. Twice removed from reality means what the reality is now? as I told you, the idea of that object is reality. The heavenly archetype, that was only real, and after that it get a form of that rose, that flower. Okay. So, when it gets that form, automatically it is once removed from the reality, it is removed from the idea. Okay. And that rose which is there in front of you, and when you look at it, then when you are getting that, or when you are understanding that object, when you are watching that object, at that time its another image would be created in our mind, and in this way its second copy would be there what you are watching. Because when a rose would be there in front of you, we cannot watch it in a 3-dimensional. Okay, means all the elements we cannot watch. Okay, we cannot watch in between. So that was the original for us, but not for Plato. So that was first removed from reality, that was removed from first, that is idea. Okay, from idea we have that rose, and this rose, when we are watching to it, we cannot watch it whole. Okay, just like what original idea was there about rose. So this, whatever we are watching, that is the second copy of that particular object. So in this way, everything on this universe, according to Plato, is twice removed from reality. After that, he has given the example, okay, bed, and bed can only be an imperfect copy of the form of bed, and any painting of that particular bed can only be a copy of copy. Now here what he says, this bed, whatever Plato is telling us, he has given example of the bed, and the idea of bed, that is original one, the heavenly archetype. Okay, it is mental concept that has been created by God. Then the same bed would be created by, because we don't get beds to any trees and all. Okay, it is being created by the craftsman. So when a craftsman create that bed, okay, that becomes copy. First, whatever basic idea is there, and this idea, when it get represented into that object, that particular bed, the work of art that is being created by that craftsman, so it becomes copy of copy. Okay, it is twice removed from reality when that bed is there. And when a painter who looks at that bed and he paints it, he make a picture of that, and at that time it becomes thrice removed from reality. The bed that has been created by craftsman, it becomes twice removed from reality, just like that rose. Okay, but the same bed, when it is being painted by a painter, that becomes thrice removed from reality, because the painter also cannot paint the object itself, because he paints only a side of that. Every corner, everything of that bed, that may not be produced by the painter. And for that also he says, Plato criticizes these painters and poets in case of the craftsmen, because craftsmen, they are greater than painters and poets. And this also holds for poetry also. Poetry, like painting, is only a reproduction of a reproduction. Instead of performing heroic deeds, the poet writes about them. Okay. So just like painting, just we have talked about the painting of that bed, and that becomes thrice removed from reality. It becomes copy of copy. The actual bed, that is also a copy of this idea that has been created by God. So painter copies that copy which has been created by craftsman. So in this way, this is thrice removed from reality, and same thing he applies to poetry also. And he says the poets, what they do, they reproduce something already reproduced. Means it is not the, there is not the originality. And he says, instead of performing heroic deeds, the poets they write about them. Means whatever heroic deeds, ideas, philosophy, the poets communicate to us. So whatever these things they are communicating, they don't use that ideas, they don't live their life with that ideas, and instead of that they just express their opinions about that different ideas, and that's why he criticizes poets also for the same. And finally, with this knowledge, okay, what poetry offers is not knowledge but opinion. What Plato says us? Plato says whatever poetry offers to us, that is the opinions of the poets, opinion of that particular author, not the knowledge. Knowledge means the reality, and that is why he criticized the poets and painters and all these things. So, this was his idea, these were his ideas about knowledge, what knowledge is. And after that he also continues the idea of knowledge with the cave image concept. He has introduced a cave image, and here in this picture you can find there is a cave and there are some person inside that cave, and when there would be the cave, automatically inside it would be dark. Okay. And this is the representation, it is a metaphor used for ignorance. Cave means it is like ignorance, the knowledge and enlightenment. For that he has used this idea, this image, and in this image he talks about the physical world, okay, what it looks like and whatever the beliefs were there of the persons, people. And here the physical world is in the form of a cave. Whatever this whole world is there, this universe is there, it is in the form of a cave. Okay. And in this cave, whoever is living, in which the humans are trapped from the beginning of life, from our birth itself, we are being trapped into that cave, we are being trapped into this universe, and we move on behind different things, different motives would be there, and where we are stationary and cannot move our heads. We cannot, when there would be ignorance, if we do not have knowledge, okay, then automatically we have to follow to others, and we do not have any other options there, and we cannot hold our head high in such a positions, and so we pursue only shadows or sounds, means we just try to imitate the others, and this only will be our life. And without reason, one of us is released and is encouraged to travel upward to the entrance. And when these things are going on in this universe while living, and if some people, one of them he came to the entrance of that cave, and obviously when one come to the entrance of that cave, then he will encounter with the bright side of that, with the light. And when he come to there at the entrance, the light is hurting his eyes that are accustomed to the dark. Okay. When one of them come to the light, automatically what happens? Till the time they were living in darkness, they were living in ignorance, and first time they came to the light, at that time automatically his eyes may not get adjusted with that light, means he will not digest that at the initial level, but slowly, because his eyes that are accustomed means habitual of the darkness, but slowly what will happen? The world of daylight represents the realm of ideas. His eyes grow familiar to the light, and he understood the ultimate source of light and life. Okay. So slowly what will happen? The daylight, whatever light would be there, okay, this light that is from where it is coming, he will get acquainted with that, means he will that light will become habitual for us, for him now, and he will be able to adjust with that. And when he will be able to adjust with that, when he becomes familiar with that, then automatically he understand the ultimate source of that light and life. When you would be in the cave, at that time you do not know from where this light is coming, because we are unable to watch to the these people, means they who were living in that cave, they are unable to watch the sun, because they do not know what sun is. But when one of them came out of that cave, and when he become familiar with the daylight, that light, at that time he become familiar with the ultimate source of light, that is obviously sun, and also what life is, because when we come out of that cave, then you come to know what other things are there, what life actually is, and there are so many different things in this universe that teaches us the meaning of life. So this he has talked. Now yet he hasn't stopped there itself, and this gradual process is a metaphor for education and enlightenment. Okay, means the person who are getting that knowledge, he becomes educated, he is acquiring the education, and his life will be enlightened. And now he says that they must enlighten others in the cave. Okay. Now they are familiar with the reality, truth of life, the knowledge they are aware about, and now they have to, it is their duty now, means whoever they acquired knowledge, they get ideas, understand everything, and after that it is their responsibility to remove the darkness of the others' lives, and then they have to bring other peoples from that cave to the reality of the life, and it is their responsibility. So he requests all his educated persons at his time to provide this knowledge to other people in the society. And after that we will move on to the art and literature, his ideas about art and literature, but we will discuss it in the next class. So till the time we will stop here. In the next class we will talk about Plato's ideas about art and literature. So particularly in this lecture we have talked about his concept of knowledge, what knowledge is, and in this itself he criticized the poets and painters and also the artists. Whatever is there on this earth, that is merely the copy of the original idea. Okay. And the writers, painters, artists, whatever they create, it is copy of copy, particularly painters and poets, their art that would be thrice removed from reality according to Plato, and because of that, means they do not represent the original, the reality, and that is why he criticizes them, and particularly Plato wanted to banish all the poets from his commonwealth. So thank you, let us meet in the next class.